Well, what a week! What a week it's been. I really don't know how to describe it, but for those of you who don't know, I do a Saturday morning live stream, and sometimes I struggle to think what we're going to talk about. But I'll tell you what, tomorrow I'm going to struggle what to actually talk about because so much has happened this week. It's gone beyond being so ridiculous this week, but here we are. And I missed unfortunately Prime Minister's question time was on Wednesday. Prime Minister's questions time. Prime Minister's yeah, whatever. PMQs. I missed all PMQs on Wednesday, unfortunately, but by all accounts, according to this, I missed a corker of exchange. But before this, for those of you who don't know, Ian Dunt, and I've said this all the time on this channel. When we look back, he is going to be one of those journalists who has been regarded as one of the people who followed this entire sorry saga from beginning to end and was constantly on point in just analysing the situation and putting it forward bluntly and clearly as possible. And he laid forward a brilliant tweet yesterday. And it all starts off with never do what your enemy expects. And it was quite clear that PMQs, Johnson was hoping that Starmer would stumble into this elephant trap and start to question him on Brexit. However, that's not what he questioned him on. That's what he really wanted to question him on. What ended up happening was, to everyone's surprise, Theresa May, of all people, seems to be leading the Tory rebellion, which has split this unified Tory party in two, because you have the ERG on one side and you have the rebels, now led by Theresa May. I know that's bizarre to say, in this argument over breaking international law. Because if there's one thing the Tories always pride themselves on, is that they are the party of rule and law. And all of a sudden, they're not. Because they're going to clearly break international law over a deal which Boris Johnson and people, all these Brexiteers, said was an absolutely amazing, incredible deal. It was oven ready. And now they're going back on the deal they said was amazing, that they signed up for, they voted for. What? It's been an absolute bizarre week. But this, I think this just sums up the entire situation, because someone commented on the channel just this week, was Boris Johnson on shrooms? It generally feels like he might have been, but yeah, this comes from the Guardian, and this is analysing PMQs of what happened, and it's perfectly examining what happened. But it is Boris Johnson lets rip another demented monologue in the Commons. MPs from both sides looked on in bewilderment at Boris's turkey of withdrawal agreement. You could sense the impatience in Boris Johnson's voice. He had come to Prime Minister's questions prepared to take Keir Starmer on over the government's new willingness to break international treaties. But the Labour leader was one step ahead. There was no need for Labour to get involved at this stage, when the EU and large sections of the Tory party were already up in arms at the prospect of the EU acting like a rogue, failed state. Let the others do the dirty work for him. Instead, Starmer chose to direct all 6 of his questions to what was on many people's minds: the ongoing mystery of why the government's world-beating track and trace system was sending people on a 700-mile round trip on the off chance that they were able to get a coronavirus test whose results will probably be lost. Who was responsible for this mess? Of course I take responsibility, Johnson said, before quickly seeking to allocate blame elsewhere. The real problem was the scheme was just too successful. Thousands of people who had been encouraged to get tested had done just that, and now there wasn't the capacity in the system, even though there were over 75,000 unused tests each day. It was time to go back to the old days when fewer people were tested and all those contact tracers could get back to making just 1 or 2 calls a week. To be fair, the Prime Minister has been less rubbish at PMQs than a week before, but probably and not by much. It's almost as if Boris was unwillingly coming to the Commons unprepared at a point as a point of principle. With no answers to any of Starmer's questions, all Johnson could do was demand to know why he was being criticised. And not for the first time, Keir tried to talk Boris through the basic format. He got to ask the questions and then the Prime Minister was obliged to answer them, or not. The government can't even manage a basic level of incompetence, Starmer said. Johnson assumed the Labour leader had made a slip of the tongue and had meant to say a basic level of competence, but Starmer had it right first time. Just a basic level incompetence would be a vast improvement on what the government was currently delivering. That's the bizarre point of where we are. It's unbelievable, but here we are. But it's still in a nagging sense that Starmer had not mentioned his plans to rewrite the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol. So he just let rip in a demented monologue. The fact was that when he had said that the deal was oven ready, what he had meant was it was ready for total incineration. The deal that he had negotiated and forced through the Commons with less than 3 days debate on it, which he had fought and won a landslide election victory on, had been actually a very bad deal, a complete turkey. Rather than protecting the Good Friday Agreement, it had undermined it, so it had always been understood by him. But if no one else, and if by no one else, that it would have to be recognised before the 1st of January. It was one of the more bizarre outbursts in a session that is becoming more surreal by the week. It can't be long before the Prime Minister is required to take a 700-mile weekly drugs test for performance-diminishing drugs. MPs from both sides of the House could only look on in complete bewilderment. There wasn't a great deal more sense on offer at the Downing Street press conference late in the afternoon, when the Prime Minister announced that the new lockdown measures that Matt Hancock had failed to mention in his statement the day before had been released to the media in the evening instead. In theory, the message should have been straightforward. Social gatherings were to be reduced to 6 groups, unless you happen to be on a bus or in the pub, in which case different rules applied. But Boris, being Boris, just couldn't help screwing things up. He announced the creation of a new vigilante squad of COVID marshals, presumably recruited from the track and tracers who had spent the last few months sitting next to a silent phone, who would be ready at a moment's notice to burst into people's homes and arrest any stray grannies or granddads that had broken the rule of 6. And yes, it was going to be tricky for him to do, as it would mean that he couldn't see all of his kids at the same time either, even assuming that even though that they wanted to see him too. So what you're basically saying is that Christmas is cancelled. Several journalists observed. Boris looked panicked. Only in July he'd said everything would be back to normal by Christmas, and he hates to be the bearer of bad news, so he just started making things up. Forget the failed app and all the other broken promises, he said. Forget that he was once dismissed mass testing as a waste of time. Now he's going for broke, with Operation Moonshot. By Christmas, everyone would be able to give themselves a daily test, then people could do what they wanted. Think of it like a pregnancy test, Boris said, though hopefully with few positives than he usually got. Hell, theatres could even do tests on the whole audience and just allow those in who were negative. It was a complete bonkers piece of pantomime. It took Chris Whitley and Patrick Vance adding a touch of realism. We are at a long way off either a vaccine or even mass testing, and the coming autumn and winter months are going to be hard. Future lockdowns might be needed. Yet again, on a day when the country had been crying out for leadership and direction, Boris had gone missing in action. You know, that just sums. I mean, the line there, from Keir Starmer was absolutely perfect and apt. If only this government could show at least a competent level of incompetence, Yeah, that sums us up where we are. We are in a complete disaster zone, an area, and this is all Boris's fault. This is all the Tories' fault. They went along with this very nicely and very calmly. And it's also really bizarre because you can go back to January, and we read through a couple of people who were at the time were already saying, I don't think this is the withdrawal agreement's going to see the end of this. And they were saying that they thought the withdrawal agreement was going to be revisited. Now, I, at the time, brushed it off because this was the deal that he had stood for. There was no way Johnson was going to go back on his deal. This was, quote, to him, finally moving forward. But apparently not. So here we are, once again in a situation of we don't know what is going to happen. And here's the thing. Lots of Brexiteers are jeering up the Brexit supporters as if they can win this because of the Gina Miller case. That is not the case. The Gina Miller case specifically in requirement to international law that Britain should hold fast to any treaties or obligations that it signs. The withdrawal agreement is an international treaty. So this, from all intents and purposes, appears to be an open and shut case. If this does go to court, Britain's broken the law. And there will be sanctions and there will be fines on us because we broke the law. Despite how many Brexiteers and Brexit supporters say otherwise, that is literally the case. And as we said at the beginning of this, the Tory party, the party of law and order and law and rule, all of a sudden has been split in two yet again. And it really didn't take long. If you think they've only been stuck together since what? January? When Boris came in? Boris was hailed as the great uniter. It will be interesting to see what reaction we might get from this rebellion, because we're a long way off from certainly any election. So he can't really threaten to remove the whip on all these people, or even though he has done already with one Tory in the Security Council issue with the Russia report. We don't know where or when what's going to happen, but it's just absolutely insane at the moment. British politics is a complete roller coaster at the moment, and it's terrifying. Think of a country where you look on to America in the Bush years, or even in the Trump years, and you laugh. And I know it feels like living in that country because it feels terrifying, and there's not a lot, unfortunately, we can do. Boris has a majority, and there's nothing that we can really do about that majority unless a lot of Tories decide to really rebel, or even, dare we say, cross over. Because this could be something you could hear whispered soon. If Boris refuses to back down on this withdrawal agreement, you could very well see possibly Conservative MPs go, I'm going to cross over to the Labour side. It's not beyond realms of possibility. And to be honest, in our 4 years of recent history since the referendum, stranger things have happened. So, with that said, thank you for watching. Please do like this video and share it about. It does help out the channel massively. If you would like, there are links below as well to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link should you like to support the channel that way. And, as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next time.